Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so if you've been following health tech at all lately, you already know the rate of innovation is it's completely staggering right now. But as we all know, innovation without safety is a pretty dangerous game. Today we're exploring exactly how the FDA is aggressively rewriting the rulebook for the future of medical technology leading up to 2026. I mean, they've realized they absolutely cannot regulate the technology of tomorrow using the frameworks of yesterday, right? And that's exactly why they stood up their Digital Health Center of Excellence. Let's dive in and look at how they're navigating this incredibly complex landscape, and we'll unpack a massive update that just dropped.
So let's start with the massive headache that's literally been keeping regulators awake at night. How on earth do you regulate a smartwatch or a learning AI algorithm? For decades, the FDA's regulatory paradigms were built for physical, tangible things. We're talking traditional pills, chemical compounds, large hardware like MRI machines. You can test a pill in a very specific, controlled, unchanging way. But trying to apply those old-school medical regulatory paradigms to incredibly fast-moving modern health tech like augmented reality interfaces or wireless devices, it's a completely different ballgame. An AI algorithm can learn and change. Your smartwatch gets firmware updates overnight. The old rules simply do not fit the new tools.
To really understand the FDA's new approach, we need to look at the specific concepts they now have to govern. Take a concept like software as a medical device, or SAMD. The official definition here is software intended for medical purposes without being part of a physical hardware device. Now, think about that for a second. We aren't just talking about the code baked into a pacemaker, we are talking about a standalone app you download on your phone that might diagnose a skin condition or analyze your breathing patterns for sleep apnea. It is fundamentally different from a physical pill, which means it requires a totally reimagined approach to oversight.
Now, dealing with this insane breadth of technology requires a highly structured ecosystem. Instead of a chaotic Wild West landscape of ad hoc rulings, the FDA has actually set up clear strategic priorities. They are focusing heavily on things like cybersecurity, augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, and wireless devices. And to actually execute on these massive priorities, they've built dedicated programs and knowledge hubs. We've got the Regulatory Accelerator, the Diagnostic Data Program, the Pre-Cert Pilot, and a vast network of digital health experts. Essentially, they're building a highly structured, predictable ecosystem to safely manage what is otherwise completely unstructured technological growth. Well, how is this massive mandate actually executed day to day? It basically breaks down into three core, escalating objectives designed to foster responsible innovation. First up, connect. They are aggressively building partnerships because they know, quite frankly, they simply cannot do this in a vacuum. Second, share knowledge. This is all about increasing industry awareness and advancing best practices. And third, which is arguably the most critical point for our explainer today, innovate. They urgently need to provide efficient, modernized regulatory approaches, but without sacrificing their absolute gold standard for safety and effectiveness.
And you know, all of this theory was recently put to the ultimate test. On April 24, 2026, the FDA officially launched a brand new digital health devices pilot program. Now, when an agency of this size and, let's be honest, historical rigidity launches a pilot, it is a massive indicator of where the entire healthcare market is shifting. They're taking those core objectives we just talked about, partnering, sharing, innovating, and dragging them right out of the boardroom to put them to the test in the real world.
That pilot is called TEMPO, which stands for Technology-Enabled Meaningful Patient Outcomes. It's designed to promote access to certain digital health devices while rigorously safeguarding patients. But here is the truly fascinating part. This is a real game changer. The FDA isn't running this alone. They've deliberately linked TEMPO with Medicare and Medicaid's access model. Why does that matter? Because it bridges the ultimate gap in healthcare. It doesn't just get a device approved, it clears the path for it to actually be covered by insurance and get into the hands of chronic care patients at scale.
And the pace of this rollout? It has been incredibly notable. Starting on January 2, 2026, the FDA began taking statements of interest from potential participants. By March, they were actively gathering follow-up information and making swift decisions. And that rapid momentum led directly to the official launch in late April. Guys, this isn't the slow bureaucratic crawl we're so used to seeing. This is an agency moving at an unprecedented speed to keep pace with the tech industry it regulates.
Zooming back out for a second, it's important to remember that pilots like TEMPO aren't just, administrative exercises. They're strategically designed to drive real-world outcomes. We're talking about advancing the core science and evidence for digital tech, providing efficient access to highly specialized experts, and aligning policies consistently. It's all about creating a highly predictable environment. They want a landscape where tech developers know exactly what the rules are and patients can implicitly trust the results.
Of course, part of achieving that predictable environment involves looking way beyond our own borders.
Digital health tech doesn't exactly stop at the shoreline, does it? An app built in Silicon Valley can be downloaded in Tokyo or Berlin in a matter of seconds. Recognizing this reality, the FDA is actively building connections with external groups like the International Medical Device Regulators Forum. Harmonizing international expectations ensures that developers don't face 50 completely different sets of rules for a single software rollout.
Ultimately, the core tension of this entire initiative really comes down to one clear mandate: innovating approaches to provide efficient, least burdensome oversight while still strictly meeting the FDA standards for safe and effective products. The FDA is walking a massive tightrope here. On one side, they are pushing so hard to ensure that life-saving innovations aren't strangled by unnecessary red tape. But on the other side, they absolutely cannot compromise on their baseline safety standards. Striking that perfect balance, that is the ultimate challenge of the digital health era. So, everything we've covered today, from defining new software categories to launching the Tempo pilot to building global partnerships, it all builds toward one ultimate goal. The FDA is establishing a completely reimagined regulatory paradigm tailored specifically for digital health. They aren't just trying to put a Band-Aid on a dusty 20th century system to somehow accommodate AI and virtual reality. They are actively building an agile, brand new framework from the ground up that actually matches the sheer speed and scale of the technology it's meant to oversee.
As the FDA innovates its own oversight, it leaves us with an incredibly exciting question to ponder. With these new, agile paradigms firmly in place, balancing rapid speed with rigorous safety, how fast will the next wave of health tech reach our homes? As the friction between Silicon Valley speed and Washington regulation finally starts to smooth out, the next life-saving digital device might be on your wrist way sooner than you ever thought possible. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on this space.